This is Modern Refugee. This is kind of an important video that I wanted to make, and what it is it's making homemade sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's kind of got a long history, goes all the way back to ancient China and medieval Europe. You didn't really have fresh food or any way to preserve food in ancient times, so they came up with fermentation. And cabbage in particular is really good to ferment, and that's what sauerkraut is fermented cabbage. It increases the vitamin C in it as it ferments. So like in the middle of medieval Europe, there was no vitamin C in the dead of winter, in the cold dark of winter, so you got it out of fermented vegetables, sauerkraut being kind of the main one of those. So I'm going to kind of show you here how I make sauerkraut. I make it in a crock. You don't have to necessarily make it in a crock. There's other ways you can make it, as long as it's a non-reactive container, something made out of glass. It could be another glass container. It can even be a mason jar. But this is just kind of the way that I normally do it. And I start here with cabbage. Of course, this isn't any cabbage that I grew. It's kind of in the middle of winter. I've already used up all my cabbage that I grew. But that also kind of gets back to another point. Cabbage is a good vegetable to grow in your garden. It's really easy to grow. It's very nutritious. It keeps a long time. But then you can do stuff like this, make sauerkraut out of it and ferment it. And I have a little visitor here. This is Backwoods Bow Wow. He's kind of just checking things out. Anyway, in kind of in an SHTF situation, having something that's high in vitamin C kind of in your stores, or the ability to make that, is something that's kind of important. At least it is to me, so that's kind of why I'm showing you guys how to do this. So anyway, you're going to take a cabbage that's washed and cleaned like this is here, and you're going to quarter this up. So you're going to cut this. And you're going to kind of leave the core intact when you cut it so it doesn't fall apart when you go to shred it. And I'll show you that here in a second. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a bowl of some type of slicing device. You can do it with a knife on a board, but this is a lot quicker. This is kind of my garage sale slicer that I've had for years and years and years. You can use like a mandolin if you, have more important, how can I say this? If you have a, like a mandolin that you bought at like a Pampered Chef party, or you have a fancier thing like that, that'll also work to shred this cabbage. But then what you want to do is you kind of want to make it into fine strips like that, and you're just going to slice it just like so. Kind of turning it as you go. So you got kind of a uniform slice. Take these kind of core pieces out here. We don't need those. They're almost too thick. But what you're going to have is you're going to have something that looks like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to add this to the crock, just like so. Spread that out. Then you're going to take a non-iodized salt. I'm using kosher salt right here, and you're going to kind of sprinkle a couple of tablespoons full across the top of this. And you're going to do this in layers as you're shredding the cabbage up, and you're going to take something to crush the cabbage and to kind of tamp it down with. And this is kind of a purposed tool right here that actually I had made. My mother actually and my grandmother used this tool for a long time, and all you do is you're going to kind of pound this down in the crock. What that does is that breaks the cell walls and it crushes the juice out of the cabbage, because when we're all done filling this crock up, it has to be covered with water. And if it's fresh cabbage from the garden, if you were doing this right fresh in the summertime, the cabbage would have enough liquid in it. But because this is kind of store-bought cabbage, this you're going to have to add water to it. I'm going to get to that here in a second. So anyway, we're going to slice the rest of our cabbage up here. You can see it doesn't take very long to slice up a head of cabbage like this. In the old days, they actually had kraut cutters that would do giant heads of cabbage in like 2 or 3 strokes. You'd have the whole thing cut right up. I don't have one of those anymore. So I just kind of use this guy here. Same thing, any real big pieces you kind of don't want to put in, so I'm going to take those out. Here we have more cabbage. That's going to go right into the crock. Get all our waste put back in here. Don't need any of that anymore. Take our salt and make another layer of salt in here. And again, I'm going to kind of beat it down. And this is actually 3 heads of cabbage in a 3-gallon crock. That's actually what the 3 means on the front of a crock. If you didn't know that, the number on the front of the crock is your how much liquid it'll hold or contents it'll hold. So anyway, I'm going to beat this down real good. Don't be shy. It likes to be beaten. You can see some liquid is kind of coming out of the cabbage already, so that's good. That's exactly what you want it to do. So now, like I said, I've already done this before. Normally you would put a weight on this and a plate and a weight and let it compress down overnight, and that salt would draw the juice out. But because this is store-bought cabbage and I already know that that's not going to happen, I'm actually going to add some water into this. I'm just going to use bottled water. You don't want to use tap water like if you live in town, because the chlorine is going to kill the bacteria that you need this to ferment. You don't want any chlorine in the water. So I'm going to add a couple bottles in here. You can kind of see the liquid coming up here a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Not too much, just about the way I want it. You're going to take a clean plate, just like this, and you're going to put that plate on the top of this, and you're going to press this down. You want to keep this covered with liquid at all times. That's actually what makes this fermentation process work. There can't be any oxygen to get to it. So you're going to kind of press that down. Take my knife here a little bit and kind of get all the cabbage pressed down around the edge of the plate. Now you're going to have to put a weight on it. And I just took a jar, clean jar, filled it full of water. We're going to set that on top of that. You can kind of press that down. And that is the weight that's going to hold that plate down. Now, if you don't even, this is kind of the fancy way to do it. I remember my grandparents, they would go out and they would get a field stone. They would wash a field stone when they did the dishes, scrub it really good, and they would use a field stone to hold the plate down to make sauerkraut. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take a clean towel, just like this, and you're going to cover this guy up. And you're going to put it in a kind of a cool, undisturbed place inside your house. And you're going to let that go for a few weeks. The longer it sits, the more sour it's going to get. It's going to take at least 10 days or so for it starting to ferment. You'll be able to see it because you'll see bubbles in it. The liquid will start to get a little bit cloudy. That's all natural parts of the fermentation process. And the good thing when you make your own sauerkraut, you can control how sour it is. So if you don't like a real sour sauerkraut, you can use it when it's not so sour and it's a little bit crisper yet. And this is going to have tons of vitamin C in it, tons of beneficial bacteria. This is kind of nature's antibiotic. So I kind of recommend everybody kind of learns how to make sauerkraut. There's different ways you can do. I mean, there's many ways that you can look up on the internet that they tell you kind of how to do it and whatnot. But this is just the way that I learned how to do it. We've had just tons of sauerkraut that we've eaten like this already. And I'll make another video down the road, maybe 3-4 weeks, kind of show you what the finished product looks like. But this is kind of your kind of instructional video on how to make homemade sauerkraut in your kitchen. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.